Are you ready, kids?
Hello, it's Employee Emilian, and welcome back to SpongeComs. Today's episode is Season 1, Episode 16, consisting of Valentine's Day and The Paper, both of which aired on February 14th, 2000. I'm doing this a day early because I'm a bit busy with college work at the moment. The animation director for both of these episodes was Fred Miller, and both were written by Chuck Klein and Jay Lender, with some help from a third co-writer. So, yeah, this is certainly two peas in a pod in terms of, people working on it, but let's see how different they are. Valentine's Day, as I just said, was written by Chuck Klein and Jay Lender, but was also written by Meriwether Williams, this being one of her first contributions to the show, and if you couldn't tell from the title, this is another very early holiday episode, and as such, it doesn't air in the regular SpongeBob rotation too much in North America, as I have been alerted by. But it's kind of a shame too, because even though I don't like this episode, it's my least favorite pre-movie episode, I do sort of see this as somewhat alright for the most part. I do understand why people like it. This opening in particular is very sweet, it is very innocent. It's very much in character for SpongeBob to treat Valentine's Day as a day to celebrate friendship instead of romance. That's another odd thing about this episode. It's never about romance. It's always about sharing Valentine's as an expression of friendship, and that wasn't possible just there with Sandy's helmet. So yeah, when people pointed stuff like this episode out during the big panic in 2005 of whether or not SpongeBob was of a different sexuality, it did seem a little odd because there wasn't anything outright romantic about it. In general, Valentine's Day wasn't originally a romantic holiday, as far as I know from common knowledge. It got that way due to marketing and advertising and just an excuse for people to bang, I guess. And if you like this episode, you are not alone, because this is Tom Kenny's second favorite episode, according to the iTunes digital volume, the Tom Kenny collection. This is right behind Help Wanted on the list, and he wrote that it was the first great Patrick episode. I mean, if you look at it in a certain way, then this is sort of where Patrick starts to get his personality together, for better or worse. But even though I don't like his portrayal here, I can't deny that it was a very important stepping stone for his character, because we wouldn't get a lot of different jokes with him if it weren't for his behavior here. So yeah, a bit of a necessary evil, especially towards the end. But I do think that some of these jokes are pretty good overall. Much of it is trying to be nice, like the first 8 minutes. Definitely a test in showing just how much SpongeBob and Patrick feel about friendship and respect on Valentine's Day. Like, SpongeBob is preparing for the best Valentine's Day gift ever and things start going awry, while Patrick is just super excited. He wants it. He really wants that Valentine's gift from SpongeBob. And that is a neat conflict. I mean, I'm not totally against a Valentine's Day episode having any sort of conflict, but it's just that they muck it up a bit often. It's such an odd trend in animation for the Valentine's Day episode to be kind of weaker than the others, especially in my opinion. It hasn't got anything to do with my thoughts on love, it's just some of them age poorly, some of them just aren't too funny. I really don't know what it is. Some shows do pull it off kind of okay, but others like this kind of get to the halfway point and then start to flounder a little bit. I say that as we are introduced to the chocolate-eating scallops, or scallops as my nationality's accent has to consider it. I don't know if there's ever been any testing of if scallops can eat chocolate. Probably can't. And this is a joke that I honestly don't get. Patrick running up the mouthful off. I forget its name. This is a very unprofessional commentary at the moment because I haven't got too much here to say. But this joke is kind of confusing because Patrick is going up to the top of the mountain to see what it is and then just jumping off for some reason to come back. I guess they needed some slapstick for this intro and some conflict. Well, some extra conflict with Sandy and the Sculpts, which is fine, I guess. Like if they had to put in a secondary conflict so that the balloon wasn't getting any closer, I'm glad that it was something this kind of strange, like chocolate eating scallops eating a giant chocolate Valentine's Day balloon. It sounds insane when you say it out loud. And yeah, I think that their plan wasn't foolproof, but it was a decent one. I guess now I should talk about how I feel about Patrick in this episode because it is kind of a big problem that I have with it. Just how aggressive he is on Valentine's Day for this Valentine's gift. And I think what they were going for was a contrast between what people usually think about Valentine's Day, that it is soft, it's romantic, it's lovely, it is a day to just chill out and express your feelings. And they're subverting that by having an episode where Patrick is being super crazy, which was a bit of a risk at this point because only Nature Pants before it had him going nuts. Like for most of season 1, he was very cool, he was very chill, he was very, I wouldn't say level-headed, but he did seem to be of average to very low temperament. They changed that to intelligence after this, but yeah. I think some of these jokes do work, but others, like most of his rampage, just doesn't really put me in a Valentine's Day spirit. I do think that this Patrick getting a handshake and being disappointed by it, his expression is fine. Like, there is a lot of potential, but after the montage, there just isn't too much with it. Like, they go in a direction that I wasn't personally too pleased with, ever. That roller coaster bit is... And again, that's what I'm saying with the contrast. Like, you've got this very happy-go-lucky Valentine's Day carnival, and Patrick is just being a bit of a grump about it. And I guess him being disappointed at the handshake, is kind of justified since SpongeBob built up the Valentine's Day gift a bit too much. But after he sees all the stuff that SpongeBob gave other people, and he goes on the big tantrum, that isn't my favorite. However, in one of the dubs, the last guy is asking for the time, as is in the English version of it, and instead of yelling, "Patrick needs love too," Patrick throws him and gives him the time anyway. Like, I think that's... I mean, that is kind of nice of him to do, just after throwing him, give him the time. And yeah, this Patrick rampage, not really deserved. I don't really think that he is very empathetic. You're not able to empathize with him up to this point, but this just kind of ruins him for me. However, in the context, I'll look at this in the perspective of someone who does like this episode. This is very dramatic. It does show a boiling point for Patrick and just how much he feels betrayed by SpongeBob. I think in that regard, it pulls it off all right. Like some of these quotes about Patrick hating hearts, they are pretty popular. Heart on sick must die. Like, yeah, right, hates the holiday now. But it isn't just the big rampage and the riot that gets me riled up in this ending. It's some of the stuff Patrick says right here, and then just the big 30 to 40 seconds of nothing happening when Sandy's balloon comes down and Patrick refuses to turn around. That's just kind of annoying. I don't think it's a very well-paced joke. It could have been a lot quicker. I think that maybe at the very end, with Patrick kind of destroying the big Valentine's Day balloon he gets and it popping all over, I don't know if that's meant to be, well, he destroyed his own gift. I guess that's what he deserves for being such a maniac. Or if it's he gets what he wants. Like, I really don't know. And the real clincher at the very end of, you didn't have to get me anything. Gosh, that just makes me... It makes the whole episode a little bit more rotten to me. Like, if you like it and are just kind of getting frustrated at me for tearing at a new one, dude, that's fine. If you like the episode, that's okay. It's just, I've seen a few better Valentine's Day episodes that do contrast the fluffiness of the holiday with something a bit more morbid. A bit better than this one. But thankfully, until I'd say about 2025 or 2026, you won't have to hear me be this negative about a SpongeBob episode ever again, because this is my least favorite pre-movie episode, so there's no way to go but up from here, and we charge right up immediately after this, because we've got a real classic on our hands coming up. The paper was written by Chuck Klein, Jay Linder, and Mr. Lawrence, the voice of Plankton. And speaking of Lawrences, Carolyn Lawrence, the voice of Sandy, considers this her favourite episode of the show. It's kind of odd considering you don't see Sandy in it, but I do kind of see this as a valid, entry point and a valid, here's why I like SpongeBob kind of episode. Because it is really good. It's very simple. I think this is one of those very basic episodes that you can blow up into having philosophical themes if you really want to be pretentious. And it has a lot of great jokes, like Squidward unfolding his chair. That's a bit of a meme. If you put something to the side that you don't like, that kind of makes sense if you have any visual cues, which you barely do with a commentary, sorry. But this is a very good example of who SpongeBob and Squidward are by themselves. I think Pizza Delivery is a bit more, fleshed out with this. It's a lot more dynamic. But the paper isn't bad at all. I know some people are a little bothered by the ending of this one, but it's very funny throughout. I do enjoy what it's saying about who these characters are. I mean, Squidward doesn't have to win all the time, because SpongeBob can just get all the joy he can out of a piece of paper, and Squidward just kind of threw it on the ground. I don't know if that's saying something about recycling or pollution in the ocean. It might be, knowing Steven Hillenburg, because SpongeBob is just making excellent use out of something that to Squidward is just a piece of paper, just garbage. And it doesn't even look like... I don't think that a candy wrapper is very good for drawing, or writing, so it isn't that kind of paper either. It's just this sort of fabric-y type of feel. But that's what makes it a lot more interesting if you look at it from a recycling standpoint. Not that I am, I'm just looking at it as a funny episode of a SpongeBob cartoon. The SpongeBob cartoon. But it makes a lot more sense if you consider that for a while, this episode's original name, at least on the Nick.com website, was Lemons Out of Lemonade. SpongeBob is making use out of the piece of paper. I guess they changed it because there aren't any lemons or lemonade in this episode. I might be forgetting a joke or two. But it is a good idea for a joke. Sorry, a good idea for a name. Could have just used more lemons. And SpongeBob calls himself Super Sponge there. Wonder if they'll ever make a game out of that. And here we get to the part of the episode where SpongeBob is just doing whatever he can with the piece of paper. Just letting his creativity run free with it. And this is just fantastic, this part of the episode, because I mean, it is another one of those little meta things, because here are the animators making his face all sorts of different things. And here's SpongeBob making a piece of paper all these different things. It's a little meta if you think about it like that. I don't think it was meant to be viewed that way. As I said, this episode has a lot of different meanings depending on what sort of angle you're looking at it, and SpongeBob is doing some good old cultural appropriation there of the Italians. A little more respectful of pirates. And I wasn't being too serious about the Italian joke. So this little gag here of SpongeBob like puffing it in and out of his holes. That also propels it above a lot of other episodes because it takes advantage of the fact that he's a sponge. And I don't know how origami works for even a character like SpongeBob who has a lot of water in him by default. And I'm also a little weirded out by the children in the background saying what it is. And here we get to another portion of the episode and another way of looking at it. Like, here's another meaning. Squidward's role in the episode. Is he, like, missing out on some sort of childhood innocence that SpongeBob has and he doesn't? And he's reading boring science there. I swear, I have a very hard time remembering all the different magazines and tabloids that Squidward reads. But some people do. I guess I'm just not good with names of news at all. This is another very good gag of Squidward painting himself, having the piece of paper. That is his desire. That is his aspiration in life at this point. And as you can see, they've done a good job at this point of just making the jokes bigger and bigger. Because now Squidward's in the foray, he wants the piece of paper. And as such, SpongeBob now has someone to really bounce off of with the paper. Like a foil. And that I really do like. As do I absolutely love his little dance there. Oh, and a little puppet Squidward. I hope that won't get annoying in 7 years. And this might also be one of my favorite gags in the episode. SpongeBob, like, using the paper as a very, very lame puppet, and everyone in town coming to laugh, including some clones. As you can see, the pink female fish is cloned there. Little animation error there with SpongeBob freezing during the bubble transition. And Squidward has a ghost cart, apparently. Oh, and when we get to the music, oh my goodness, do I have a lot to talk about. First of all, SpongeBob's quote of saying, all those wrong notes you play make it sound more original. That is one of my absolute favorite SpongeBob quotes. I'm just going to say it out loud. It might be in the top 5 of all time, if I'm being honest. But also, apparently, I know they're playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, but apparently all the music sheets that appear, all the notes, are incorrect. Literally everything is incorrect. That makes me think perhaps they were using a different song at first, but then went with Mary Had a Little Lamb. Maybe for copyright reasons, maybe for more comedic effect, maybe someone thought it was funnier. And SpongeBob and Squidward still look poorly green screened until the scene changes right here. Just if you have a keen eye or if you're watching it in HD, you'll notice it, and it might take you out of the experience, which is one of my biggest pet peeves with animation, but the rest of it is just so funny that you don't really care. Oh, and this is another very clever gag. I know I'm saying that a lot with this episode, but oh my gosh, this is just such a funny episode with so many different ways that SpongeBob uses the paper. And here's another one of the big ideas that might be invading our pretentious consciences with this episode. the ending with Squidward selling or trading literally everything he has for the piece of paper, except for the floor of his house. They still need a way to show that that's where his house used to be to make it a little more depressing, I guess. I guess you could look at some sort of old fable or philosophical tale and see some parallels, but I don't know. I just find it a really funny ending where Squidward just is a fool, to put it bluntly. He's foolishly selling everything he has for a piece of paper that he doesn't know if it'll work on him. Oh, and I love that Caesar head that Squidward has of himself. And it's also good to see SpongeBob portray an emotion other than pure joy in this portion of the episode, as SpongeBob is kind of confused and sad. He doesn't know exactly what Squidward's doing. He doesn't know if he's testing him anymore, because Squidward is just getting that desperate now. And both him and SpongeBob just look so different with and without the shirt. Squidward looks naked and SpongeBob looks more like a Rocco character. I guess that's part of the point. And another odd thing about this ending, Jay Linder posted a sketch on Twitter about a year ago where all of Squidward's junk sort of compiled and his head went on top and it turned into some sort of giant gorilla thing. And Steven Hillenburg shot it down, I guess because it was just too crazy for this episode. I mean, I think it's a good idea that was left out. It might have been funny, but I have two reasons for that. One, good neighbors. Two, I think that it needed to be brought down to a more normal temperament for an ending this sort of dour and moral heavy about desires. Like, if it kept getting crazier, that'd be a little unsatisfying for it not to have an arc. That's just how I feel. That's the last truly hilarious gag of the episode that I love. Gary just going to town with that clarinet and not sounding too much different from Squidward. So yeah, this was a bit of a mix, this episode of SpongeComs. One episode that doesn't really tickle my fancy, and another one that I can really look into, a lot of people can look into, including the people who consider it one of their favorites, like Carolyn Lawrence. I think that we can all agree that Patrick is a bit of a jerk in both episodes, though. So, my question of the week last week was, what is the worst thing Patrick's ever done? And I got two answers. First from Super Seal, torture Squidward. I mean, that happened quite a bit, but I think you're referring to Ink Lemonade. And Jack McGinn says, everything he did to Gary and Pet Sitter Pat. Way too true. That was my pick as well. And my question of the week for you this week is, which holiday episode of SpongeBob is your favourite? There are a lot of good ones, like your mileage will vary on Valentine's Day, but I know that it has its fans. But there are a lot to choose from, so look at your calendar, think of all the different holidays you love, and if they were portrayed well on SpongeBob, and just let it be known what your favourite is. Next time we're looking at Arg and Rock Bottom, two also really good episodes, and goodbye for now.